English Pronunciation Lesson 10. Topic: Intonation. Part 1. Here are the lesson objectives: to recognize falling and rising intonation patterns, to understand what falling and rising intonation patterns communicate, and to develop your ability to use falling and rising intonation patterns with accuracy in your own speech. In this lesson, we're going to study intonation. Intonation helps create the music of a language. Just as in music there are high notes and low notes and notes in the middle, when we speak there are high notes and low notes and notes in the middle. If we didn't have intonation, our voice would sound like this. It would be very flat and it would be very strange, wouldn't it? With intonation, you can understand speakers' feelings. You can understand their attitudes. You can understand if they're asking you a question or if they're done speaking and you can say something in response. In short, intonation is necessary in communication. You need to understand it so that people can communicate to you, and you need to be able to use intonation so that you can communicate back to them. Now, in previous lessons, we talked about word stress, and in stressing a word, I explained that it was necessary to make a syllable louder, longer, and at a higher pitch. So you may be wondering right now, what's the difference? Before, we were talking about making our voice go higher in a word, and now we're also talking about making our voice go high or keeping it low. Well, word stress is exactly that, stress within a word. When we talk about intonation, we're talking about how our voice goes up or down over the course of a group of words in a statement. So intonation is a long line of melody. It's where a voice will go up or it will go down over the course of a statement. In English, we can talk about different intonation patterns. In this lesson, we're going to focus on the two most basic patterns, falling intonation and rising intonation. Falling intonation. What is it? What does it communicate? Falling intonation is a pattern in which your voice falls to a low pitch by the end of a thought group or statement. It communicates certainty, finality. You are telling a fact and/or you believe you are right. It also communicates completion. You are done speaking. Your listener can now respond. That response could be in words, it could be in actions. That's why falling intonation is used in commands and directions. Let me give you an example of falling intonation.
Eric builds flutes. He began building flutes after college. He has one flute of his very own. Now we said intonation is a line of melody. In this example, we have 3 lines of melody. Let me show you. You can see that my 3 lines of melody are 3 sentences. 3 thought groups. Now we could break the last 2 sentences into shorter thought groups. We could pause again here before after, and perhaps here before of, but that wouldn't change the fact that overall in those lines of melody we will have falling intonation. And that's because we're dealing with statements. We're not asking questions, and we're certain of the information that we're giving. These are factual statements. Now, if we have falling intonation, where exactly does our voice begin to fall? When we spoke of thought groups, we talked about the last content word receiving the most stress. So, for example, in the first line, Eric builds flutes, these are all content words, but the final one is flutes. When we speak of intonation, it's that same final content word that will be the point where the melody changes. So overall, our voice is going to stay here and then drop down on flutes, our final content word. And flutes has only one syllable, so we need to slide down. As we say that one syllable, our voice needs to glide down, and it's very quick. Flutes. Now, just because I've chosen to use a straight line here until flutes, don't think that means that our voice is flat and then all of a sudden falls at the end. We are speaking of intonation, but we must remember that there's word stress. So if you want to be exact, then the pattern of our voice would look something like this. Eric. Stress is on the first syllable, builds as one syllable, and flutes receives our main stress. Eric builds flutes. Okay. So there is still a change of pitch because there is word stress, but the overall pattern is falling intonation. So as not to confuse you with all of this up and down, I'm simply going to draw that straight line and then show how our voice falls at the end of the statement on flutes. Now in the second sentence, our final content word is college. College has two syllables. It's the final content word giving new information. And because college has two syllables, our voice falls a bit differently in contrast to flutes. Flutes had one syllable, so our voice glided down. With college, two syllables, our voice sort of steps down. College, from one level to the next, from a higher level to a lower level. So again, the overall pattern is like this. But then, at the end, it goes up and steps down. He began building flutes after college. College. In the last line, our final content word giving new information is own. And like flutes, it's one syllable. So, the overall pattern stays the same till the end. And on that final content word, our voice will glide down. Own. He has one flute of his very own. Listen to the entire example again.
Eric builds flutes. He began building flutes after college. He has one flute of his very own. End of part 1. Please go on to the next part of this lesson.